Hello there and welcome to Black Jackal Gaming. We've just had the Dataslate updated and we got a nice Christmas bonus for Space Marines. So there's been a lot of datasheet updates for the units. There's been some point changes going in both directions, but mostly up, but you'll see why. The faction bonus is just for Codex Space Marines, so that's quite nice, just giving us a bonus that isn't going to buff the supplement chapters. And there's new abilities for the epic characters again, which is buffing Codex Space Marines. Some very interesting changes that we're going to look at, and they're all for the better. So looking at the updates to Codex Space Marines, the army rule. If the army does not contain units from Black Templars, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Death Watch or Space Wolves, you add 1 to the wound roll against your Oaths of Moment target. So this is very nice. So not only against your Oaths of Moment target do you get the reroll to hit roll, you get in +1 to wound as well, which is very nice and going to allow you to hit all that more harder against your Oaths of Moment target. This does really allow you to be differentiated from the supplement chapters, which aren't going to get that and +1 to wound. File Discipline enhancement for the Gladius Task Force has had a bit of a change. So what is changed too? So it keeps the sustained hits 1, but when you're in the Devastated Doctrine, you can now reroll the advanced rolls for the unit. This replaces the old rule that allowed you to gain critical hits on a 5+ when in Devastated Doctrine. So it is not quite as good. It has taken a downgrade, but unfortunately it has stayed at the same price. So you probably are going to struggle to fit this into your list now. Another decent change is the combat knives and paired combat blades now are -1 AP, which is very nice. You find these on the likes of your Phobos Lieutenant, your Lieutenant with Combi Weapon, your Reaver Lieutenant, your Reavers and your Incursors, squads like that that have an enlisted combat knife or paired combat blades. This art isn't for all units, so most units have your combat weapon, which will stay at 0 AP. A lot of the epic characters have had an upgrade, which is really nice. So first up we got Darnath Lysander of the Imperial Fists. If you include this model in your army until the end of the battle, any non-character models and Terminator Assault Squad and Terminator Squad units from your army will have objective control of 2 while they are not battle shocked. So this is any Terminator unit in your army. Characters that are joined to this unit will not get the additional OC, just the Terminators. So this is every single one, not the one that Darnath is attached to. And you'll see this repeated for the rest of the epic heroes, where it isn't the unit that they're attached to. It's all those units with those keywords. So next we have Ironfather Pharos of the Iron Hands. If you include this model in your army until the end of the battle, non-character models and heavy intercessor squads, they will have objective control 3 while they are not battle shocked. So quite a nice little buff there for heavy intercessors. Looking at Kavan Shrike, again, it's the same rule, but this is for the Assault Intercessors with Jump Pack. So any unit, just the one actually, that has that keyword, they'll have objective control 2 while they're not battle shocked. Then we have Kosaro Khan, the Khan of the White Scars. His ability is attached to Outrider squads, and they will have objective control 3, which is very nice. And you can have ATVs in your Outrider squad as well, so you can actually have your 6 models and your ATV. So you've got a lot of OC built into that unit there if you want to go down that route. You got Pedro Cantor. He is of course of the Crimson Fists, and his is for Sternguard veteran units. They'll have objective control 2 whilst they're not battle shocked. And finally we have Falcon Hestan of the Salamanders. His is for the Infernus squad, as you would expect being a Salamander, and they will have objective control 2 when they're not battle shocked. Now finally we have Rebute Gilliman, leader of the Imperium of Man. He's had quite a change. So currently he has the author of the Codex, so he gets to choose from one of 3 abilities at the start of your command phase, and this is for each turn. This is changed now where you can select 2, which is quite a nice little buff that you get. So your first one is friendly units within 6 inches get +1 to the objective control, and they get to reroll battle shock leadership tests, so that's okay. The second is to select an Oath of Moment target, but it's important to note that this second Oath of Moment target, it only becomes active once the first has been destroyed. So if you don't manage to destroy that first Oath of Moment target, the second one you will not get your rerolls to hit and your +1 to wound. And finally, you can target a friendly unit within 12 inches and you can reduce the cost of a stratagem by 1 CP. So that's your standard captain ability. So it's quite nice that you get to choose 2 of these rather than 1. Unfortunately, they aren't the strongest, really. You've got a captain's ability, you've got the second oath that is only good if you manage to kill the first one, so you might have to target your first unit as something that is very killable to activate the second one. And then getting a +1 to OC is a little bit more niche, and we've got lots of OC going around now, so it might not be that beneficial, but to get 2 out of 3, you're always going to be choosing the oath, and then it's down to whether you want the CP or the OC. Looking at the rest of the datasheet updates, we've got quite a few. First up, we've got the Captain in Gravis armor. So his master-crafted heavy bolt rifle has had its damage increased from 2 damage to 3 damage. The heavy intercessor squad has 2 upgrades. First of which, the heavy bolt rifle has gone up to 2 damage, which is very nice. And the heavy bolter ballistic skill is now BS3 rather than BS4. So a nice little buff there. There's not a big difference between the bolter and bolt rifle now. You've got the same AP, same damage, but you do get the 1 additional shot on the heavy bolter as well as the sustained hits, which is very nice. Then we've got the Infernus squad. Their pyroblasters now have AP -1, which is really good to have, especially if you are taking the Firestorm detachment, because within that you get your +1 strength, and when you're targeting the closest unit, you get that additional AP, so these are going to be quite tasty. They also have a change to their ability. At the moment, you select 1 unit that's been hit by their attacks and they take a battle shock test. That battle shock test will now be taken with a -1 modifier to it. Next, we have the Inceptor squad. So it's important to note that across all units with abilities that allow them to deep strike closer than the 9 inches of standard deep striking units, they've all been changed. So the Interceptor squad used to have a deep strike of 3 inches. That's now changed to 6 inches, and that's been standardized across the entire of the game. So any ability or stratagem or enhancement that allowed any unit to come down closer than 9 inches, it cannot come down closer than 6 inches now. And you still cannot charge once you come down within that 6 inches. So if you come down at 9 inches, you get to shoot and potentially charge. If you decide to come in closer, up to 6 inches away, you can shoot, but you cannot charge. Then we've got the Outrider squad. They've got a very nice one. So their current ability is that they get to automatically advance 6 inches rather than rolling a d6. So that's gone out the window now, and it's changed to that when they charge, they get +1 strength and +1 damage for that turn, which is a very nice bonus to have. And it gets very nice into Blood Angels as well. If you're taking their main detachment, they already get +1 attack and +2 strength. So you're on +3 strength, +1 attack and +1 damage. So that's some very, very killy chainswords at that point. You've got them up to strength 7 and 2 damage and a hell of a lot of shots coming in. The Predator Annihilator has had a little update. So its ability activates at the moment against monsters and vehicles, and it still does, but this now allows you to reroll the damage roll. So a little buff for it. Reaver squads have a double update, which is quite nice. Their ability that forces a unit to take a battle shock test at the start of a fight phase. And this now has a -1 modifier to it, so it's gotten a little bit better. And they've got the new ability when they're within 3 inches of a unit. This is excluding monsters and vehicles. They reduce models in that unit's OC by 1. So you're going to push a lot of models onto 0 OC. So this is going to make these guys quite good at capturing objectives without having to charge like they would have in the past, trying to force the battle shock. They can now get in there, reduce them to 0 OC and steal that objective. It's important to also note that if you take the combat knife with them, they've now got a -1 AP attached to it. So they've had another buff given to them there. Looking at the Repulsor Executioner, very small change. This can now carry the 7 Adeptus Astartes infantry models rather than the 6. So this gives you the ability to add 2 characters to a 5-man unit now and still be able to get in. And finally, we have the Sternguard Veteran Squad. Their current ability allows them to reroll wound rolls are 1s against the over moment target, and this has been changed now to a full reroll against the over moment target, which is quite nice. It's back to kind of what they were designed to do in the index, where you had your over moment was full rerolls to hit and wound, and then these guys would activate that, get the anti-infantry 4+, the devastating wounds, and if they killed the unit once again, they could fire again, which made them very powerful. They were heavily nerfed multiple times, but now they're a little bit in the right direction now. With that reroll to wound, it's going to allow them to really roll into that +4 anti-infantry and those devastating wounds just to bypass the save throws. Oh, and actually finally this time is the Intercessor Squad. Last but by no means least. They have a new ability, and it's a very nice ability of that as well. So they get to add 2 attacks to the characteristic of bolt rifles when they're targeting just one enemy unit. So they currently have 2 attacks. If your 5-man squad, which is 10 attacks in total, is targeting one unit and not split and fire, they then get to shoot 20 times instead of the 10. This is quite nice because the wording allows it to activate during Overwatch as well. So looking at the point changes, this is going to show which direction everything moves in. First up, we've got the Heavy Intercessor Squad. They've gone up by 15 points. So it's 110 points for a 5-man unit, 220 points for the 10-man unit. But it is important to note that they do have that buff to the damage on the heavy bolt rifle, and the heavy bolter has extra ballistic skill. So they were already a decent price point, so 15 points is probably a touch too far for them. 5 to 10 points was probably the sweet spot. But we'll have to see how the meta plays out, because they could end up being very nice in a couple of the different detachments, especially with that +1 to wound now, with that strength 5 bolter. The Inceptor Squad went down by 10 points, to 120 points for 3, 140 points for 6 model unit. And this is due to the nerf to their ability now coming down 6 inches away rather than 3. So this is quite a nice change, because it makes them much cheaper. You were mainly using them for the damage output rather than the ability to steal an objective, because they're only OC1 and there's only, even come down 3 inches away, there's only so much space you can take up on an objective. So them coming down in points is probably a buff for them. Marnius Calgar was very efficient for his points. He's a very good character. The Codex was just lacking a little bit. You would rather take the supplements, even though Marnius was a great character to say. Going up 15 points is probably fair. The Reaver Squad up 5 points. Having the update to one of the abilities and the ability to knock down models by 1 OC is very good. They get to deep strike. They get to ignore cover when they're moving over it. The vertical distances, that is. So it makes them actually quite fast, even though they don't have a jump pack. They do also have that -1 to their combat blade now, and they have the precision on the combat blade and the pistol or the carbine, so they're actually an interesting looking model at the moment. Rebooted Gilliman has gone up a whopping 60 points to 345 points. I get that we've had an update to his ability where he can now take it 2 times, and the upgrade to Oaths a Moment makes one of those abilities really good to activate it a second time. But I think 60 points is really steep. You might struggle to see him fit on the tabletop. There's a lot of durable units out there, and if you can't chew through that first unit, his ability becomes pointless, and those extra 60 points, they can go a long way elsewhere. And your Scout Squad is up 5 points, 70 points for 5 models, 140 points for the 10-man unit. They've gone up multiple times. I think they started out at 55 points, so they're now gone from 55 to 70 points. They're getting to that point now where their efficiency for points is starting to decrease in comparison to other units that are getting new abilities, drops in points, and the update to other rules in the game, so making them looking a little bit more interesting. Your Scout Squad is still a good unit, but at 70 points for 5-man, it's going towards the probably going to be included, but maybe not an auto-include. Maybe an auto-include for 1 unit, but not the 2 to 3 that we saw in the past. Your Stern Guard Veteran Squad has gone up 10 points. The update to their ability is probably worth the 10 points. And there's a couple of cheeky combos you can have there. If you give them the likes of Titus with the sustained hits, that's going to really get the most out of them, especially when you can fish for those critical hits if it's no for moment target, which you should be targeting. And then you got the 4 rerolls to wounds to fish for those devastating wounds as well on the 4+ against infantry targets. Even though it might be slightly on the high point, if you're pointing these guys at the right type of unit with the right combinations and support, they're going to do quite a bit of damage. They're looking very interesting, I'd say. And finally, we got Uriel Ventress. We all know about this guy. He's a very good character. He's awesome. He's got the ability to give a unit deep strike, and it's been heavily abused for multiple different units that then have had multiple different nerfs. And when you've got the likes of Titus coming in and really buffing up the likes of Hellblasters and your Certain Guard veterans, and you've got your buffing to Oathsome Moments and a lot of the units in the game, you probably really did need a points increase. 20 points, it sounds a lot, but you probably should have been around the 95 point mark anyway. Maybe 90 points might have been a bit fairer, but anything less than the 15 point increase would probably be looking at far too few for what he was capable of. If you like the video, guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel to see future content. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.